When I was 12 years old, I was the head choir boy at Shelton Parish Church. I was a promising pupil of Mr. Bill Rogers, the organist and choir master, and I was able to play a few hymns on the organ. I couldn't reach the pedals, however, and that was a thing. I would reach out for a bottom C sometime. I couldn't reach it. However, I did manage to one or two of my piano pieces to play them on the organ, and I used to play those as volunteers for these very, very small services. But I can't say that I was an official assistant organist, but that is what I did, played for the services. Mr. Rogers wasn't always able to get for the smaller services because during the war everybody had to do work of national importance, and his was that he had to leave his organ work for working at the munitions at Swinnerton. However, that was good for me because by the time I was 14 I was able to play and reach the pedals then, and I remember an advertisement for the organist at St. Luke's when I was only 14 years old, and I applied for the post, and Reverend Arthur Perry appointed me, and as I say, that was on January the 8th, 1942, and I'd been 14 since October. I wasn't choir master, obviously, but I gradually got better and better, and there was one lovely incident where, and this had an effect on one particular piece of music. When I was still about 12, I went down to a church called Odd Road, where Mr. Rogers had been doing some repairs to an organ, and he actually played a recital of organ music, and he asked if I would go down as one of his choir boys and sing a song during the actual recital. So I went with him. I sang Angels Ever Bright and Fair. But what I'm coming to was that he played one piece of music that I thought, if ever I'm able to reach the pedals, that'll be the first piece that I'm going to play. And it was Evensong by an English composer, Easthope Martin. And that did happen. I've got that copy now that was given to me by Prebendary Parkhouse, Easthope Martin's Evensong. And I still play it now almost for every wedding because it's so lovely. And I've got a copy of the letter that was sent by the rector of Odd Road to Mr. Rogers saying, thank Philip also for his contribution with my solo. So I rather treasure that letter, and it's never going to go out of my possession, in my memorabilia. At St. Luke's, I remember on the Saturday afternoon before I played my first service, Ray, some children or youth, teenagers came across from the youth club across the way to see who this whippersnapper was who was going to come and play our organ, you see. And it was nice. I became a member of their youth club, of which my darling Dorothy was a member, and that's where we met, and we've done, dare I say, 68 years of married life. That's something, isn't it? 68, yes. We managed to do several things in the Etruscan Choral Society, so then I became a friend of the conductor, Harry Vincent, who was the conductor of the Choral Society, Etruscan. And whenever we did Stainer's Crucifixion or Olivet to Calvary, Harry Vincent used to bring half of his choral societies to sing with us. I used to sing a tenor part in God's Soul of the World, and he would sing the bass part and so on. So that was in Stainer's Crucifixion. Then we would do Olivet to Calvary together. That was at St. Luke's. So we did some things there. When I first moved to Shelton, I used to live at near to Mowcop Station, would you believe? But my father had to come to work in Shelton, and that is how we come to live in Salisbury Avenue, Shelton, which was absolutely gorgeous, near to Hanley Park. And I remember the first thing we did was to find a church, and Shelton was the one. Shelton St. Mark's, and they had a wonderful choir, mixed choir, and about 12 or 13 boys, and my brother and I served an apprenticeship, Ray. We couldn't go into the choir just like that. You had to be somebody and show that you could behave. and you serve this 3 months apprenticeship, and he and I were able to join the choir. And my father, as a lovely bass, was able to join later. So there we are. That's Shelton St Mark's, and a lovely place. A lovely, dear old rector Parkhouse. And he was always an old man there, but he went on and on and on. And one of my directors at Shelton Iron and Steel was on the Parochial Church Council of St Giles, Newcastle. And he said, you ought to come and be our organist, you see. And this was a sort of promotion within the organists setup. And so I thought, oh, organist at St Giles, see, and choir master. Wow. Anyway, I went to see the rector there, and that was all fixed up, much to the pleasure of this director of Shelton Bar. Oh dear, so we were connected. But I did 2 years there. But during that time I had 4 months of TB in a sanatorium, would you believe? But they didn't do much about it. There was one young man in the choir who was a very good organist, named Paul Emery, and he deputised for me the months that I was in the sanatorium. Went back there and had a happy time for another year or so. But actually, at the time, Ray, I was living at Weston Coyney, and the journey from Weston Coyney to Newcastle to do 2 choir practices and 2 Sunday services was a bit much. So we talk about church wardens. Dorothy's cousin was a church warden at St John's, and a lot of talk went on, you know, about us going to there, which was nearer to Weston Coyney. That's the only reason. I had a wonderful time at St Giles, conducting music festivals and so on. But I did go to St John's, to Father Creswell, and we had a very, very happy time. But then, of course, we heard about this demolition of the church that was going to be taking place. And that's how I came to come to Trenton. And my teacher, and always interested in my progress, because I was a reasonable pupil of his, and he said, you might be interested in the situation at Trenton Parish Church, St Mary and All Saints. The organist there is retiring, and they have a lovely organ, and I understand you always sing with the choir as you're playing the organ, and I can tell you this, you'll be standing right by, or sitting right behind the tenors, so that'll be in your favour, which it is, of course. I remember the first meeting I had with the choir, Ray, was one Wednesday evening, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I got about 7 or 8 basses on my right-hand side, 1 solitary tenor and 2 apprentice tenors, who are now in their 70s. And actually, one is a very interesting member of our congregation, Keith. And anyway, we had this choir practice, and we did the usual things, the canticles for the even song, and the Te Deum for the morning service, and an anthem that the previous choir master had started to work on. And I remember at 9 o'clock-ish, I was walking down the path. Everybody else had gone home, and one chap had stayed behind to escort me down the church path. And it was a Mr. Joe Thomas, and he stayed a friend of mine all these years. Anyway, Joe says, you know, Mr. Harrison, he says, I didn't feel like coming tonight to choir, I was a bit tired, but I'm jolly glad I came. Isn't that a wonderful start? A lovely encouragement. And then, of course, I played my first Sunday, and I loved every minute of it, and all these choir turned up. 6 magnificent altos, Ray, contraltos, which is a very rare thing, and 7 or 8 sopranos, and about 10 young boys. And well, these boys now are now in their mid-70s, and it's wonderful. And I am in touch with 1 or 2 of them. They give me a ring every now and again, and they often say how much their choir work contributed to their academic careers. They were always thankful of what we'd done together. So that was the choir and my first Sunday. Thereafter, it's been one thing after another. Having a full choir, there was no limit to what we could do. Just away from the traditional anthems that that this choir could sing very, very well, and they had done them in the past. And we had a wonderful anthem book with 100 traditional anthems, and we could pick almost any page and put it on after a few practices. But we were able to do the major stuff as well, the big stuff. I remember conducting Vivaldi's Gloria with Michael Rhodes at the organ. Michael is the Victoria Hall organist, and we've been friends all our musical lives. He was also a pupil of Dr. Forrester, so you can see the connection. We did a Messiah, and we were augmented by May Wally's Bedford Singers and some members of the Etruscan Choral Society, of which I started my singing career. We did a lot of charitable things. We would do a concert each year. Well, yes, a concert. And we would have the year's charity. For instance, we did one big concert for the extension to a hospital in Pakistan, which was each year our church at that particular time had a project, and that was my contribution to it. And I did my organ marathon. I played for 6 hours, and with the comfort breaks, of course. But I raised £1,100 for that, about 1975, something like that. And I did 2 of those marathons. The second one was, for, would you believe, for providing furniture for the curate's new house. And I understand that the furniture is still there. So it was £1,000 for that. We had concerts with the Staffordshire Authority, of which I was a tutor of the youth choir and a peripatetic teacher, travelling around the various schools as a music teacher. And members of the county youth choir came to augment my choir when we were doing things, and I also made friends with the Staffordshire chorus, and they all came. Not all together, of course, but whenever I wanted anything, I knew I'd get on the end of a telephone and people would come and help. We had concerts where I didn't actually play the organ, but we had concerts with my colleagues in the Staffordshire music department. All the instrumentalists that would come here, and we would have a concert. It was wonderful. And I remember bringing my Stoke-on-Trent boys choir, 30 boys choir, all aged 12 and under. And I remember my wife, Dorothy, made dicky bows, blue velvet dicky bows for all these boys, and they were proud. And that was prior, would you believe, to their singing the same things in the Royal Albert Hall. We made 4 visits to the Royal Albert Hall in the various elements of the authority. Staffordshire Youth Choir, the brass band, Staffordshire Youth Brass Band. All this is youth work. Staffordshire Youth Brass Band, Staffordshire Youth Orchestra, and of course I made friends of all of them over the years. So wonderful. And they came here to give concerts. So it's been a lively 60 years. And it's still quite lively, though I do get some help now, Ray. We have a very, very good selection of musicians who do music for the worship. We call them the worship groups, and they're very, very good indeed. They work so that it is perfect, and they play for the hymns occasionally, and we have these screens pulled down for the congregation to see the words of the hymns. But they're very nice people, and we work well together. I do 2 or 3 hymns, and they do 2 or 3 hymns and songs. So a little bit of the pressure is taken off me now. I regret to say, Ray, that I miss the choir. Gradually it dwindled. I can't understand why, but when it got down to about 15, something like that, the powers that be thought, well, it's not really a choir after all, you see. So it phased out, and I was just left with the organ work to do, which there's, of course, plenty to do with weddings and funerals and the traditional services on Sunday. So the organist's job is pretty full. Yes, I joined the Stoke-on-Trent Music Authority in 1974. Prior to that, I had been an accountant at Shelton Iron and Steel, which everybody knows was going to be nationalised, and lots of things happened. I was sent up to Scotland to see if I wanted to work up there, but I had a month up there and decided against it. So there was no future for me in the steel industry, and I just had a notification, would you believe, from my piano tuner. He says, let me have a word with Alan Paynes, our head of music for Stoke-on-Trent, and have a chat with him, see. So Alan Paynes came on to me the next day, could you come up and see me? And in a few days, I was put onto the staff of Stoke-on-Trent Music Authority as a peripatetic keyboard teacher. But then, as I say, after a couple of years, Mr. Taylor asked would I be a tutor of the county youth choir, which of course thrilled me to bits. And Alan Paynes, in that 1974 period, asked me if I would take on the Staffordshire Boys. They hadn't got a boys' choir as such, and asked if I would form a boys' choir. Well, that I did, and we used to practice on Wednesday evenings, and the teachers from the school used to bring the boys, 3 or 4 of them from each school, and it was a very happy setup altogether. I can think of a very, very special occasion, and that was 10 years ago when I'd completed 50 years as organist. Again, I had Michael on the organ, and choristers from all around the diocese, the deanery possibly, were invited to come and sing Saturday afternoon evensong. We had a rehearsal, a choir practice at say 3 o'clock till 4:30, then we had tea together, then we had our evensong at 5:30. And there were 106 guests, which filled the centre of the church, and we did a complete evensong, a psalm, 5 hymns, my favourite hymns, and the anthem, which you can't beat, Stamford's Te Deum, and it went very well. Got sopranos on this side, contraltos on the other side, and tenors and bass behind. And even choristers that used to be in the choir 13, 40 years ago turned up. They were choristers in their new places where they lived, but they came and sang with us. And so that was we had 4 past parsons, 2 or 3 vicars that came back and took part in the service. One, Reverend David Marsh, who's retired, and he helps in the Nantwich diocese over there, and he preached a lovely sermon, and I was presented with a copy of the picture of the crucifixion that is over our altar, and so we've got a smaller edition of that. We've put it in a position where it smacks at people the moment they walk in the lounge, because we're so proud of it. And that was presented to me, and by the vicar at the time, Reverend Di Castiglione. So that was the happiest moment of my 60 years, I promise you that.
And what about this particular church, Trenton Church, and this community? What is it about this church that keeps you here, as it were?
Well, there's a lovely, happy atmosphere. Always has been with vicars. They've come here, they've got on well with congregations, and I've certainly made a lot of friends, not just choristers, but friends in the congregation. In fact, Ray, much to possibly a lot of people's annoyance, whenever there's an opportunity, I jump off my seat, the organ seat, and come and sit on the front row so that I can hear the lessons and join in the intercessions, and of course to listen to the vicar's sermon, whoever he is. And I just love to be part of it. There's a feeling, a friendly feeling. And my wife and I have commented on our walk down the path how uplifted we feel, that how blessed we are to have this. And we feel that every Sunday when we go down the path, that, oh, that was a lovely service, lovely sermon, wasn't it? You know, whether it was or not. And, but that is the feeling, tremendous ambience, everybody getting on well, a tremendous parochial church council that seemed to do the right things, you know. There was one lovely thing that our present vicar, Adrian, insisted. He says, Philip is going to play 2 items of his favourite items on the organ at the end of the service, and I want you to all sit down and be quiet. sit and listen. And they did, bless them. And I got applause, would you believe? Might have been the first time in my 60 years.